All right, hello everyone. It's good to have you here. Thanks for joining us today. This is our fourth annual virtual CNSS Data Summit, Defining Measures That Matter for Indigenous SEM. I'm Lisa Silverstein. I'm the Senior Program Officer for TCU Student Success, and this summit is our largest yet, bringing together our 5 original CNSS TCUs and 23 newer TCUs in CNSS to share in learning and conversation about TCU key enrollment indicator development. Today in our agenda, we'll hear how data and meaningful key enrollment indicators are foundational to SEM from our Salish Kootenai College and Oglala Lakota College colleagues. And then it'll be followed by 2 TCU KEI highlights, the first on student supports from Little Priest Tribal College and Bay Mills Community College. The second highlights will be from Illisavic College and White Earth Tribal and Community College on data capacity building. These highlight sessions include small group breakouts for conversation and reflection to interact and learn in community. The CNSS and Research and Evaluation College Fund team members welcome you all today as we all learn together. So I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan, our Cohort 1 Program Officer, and he'll start us off with a reflection and then introduce our Salish Kootenai and Oglala Lakota College colleagues. So we're happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Lisa. Hi, everybody. My colleague, Delphina, had mentioned, Jonathan, you should do the opening reflection. I don't usually volunteer myself for a lot of things like these, but I did want to just say a few things because as a program officer working with the original 5 TCUs in the initiative, it's just been an honor to be witness to a lot of learning and development from the early days of CNSS. And, we've learned a lot over the years, but when it comes to data, it's really good to see the growth and potential just really be achieved through benchmarking, through the development of KEIs, the utilization of data and decision making. Right now I'm seeing a lot of the TCUs I work with do a lot of different innovative things like data walks and data summits, and also using that information to really make data meaningful to your students and to the communities that you serve, instilling cultural values and in the benchmarking process, but also how you share and disseminate your data to your community, your campus community, and your students. I think just seeing this kind of work go forward is just really amazing. And I think as the new TCUs in the initiative and the older original 5 TCUs think through where you're at right now, and in a year's time, come back to this moment and just think what you have accomplished, and even just incremental changes are really to be celebrated. I really think that's going to be something you'll see in the next year as you complete your benchmarking and then also update your dashboards and key enrollment indicators. Because for me, it's been a valuable and learning experience, and I really wish and hope the best that you experience that as well. But I was gonna start our day off in a good way. Start with a simple Blackfoot prayer. I'm from Siksika Nation in Southern Alberta in Canada, and I'll say the prayer in our Blackfoot language. Ayu apastadoki ispomokinan nagai taksitsinan nagokimodoi sinan. Nagayagaki Masini, Nagoka Gomoto Sinan, Nagawa Daiya Jacksonan, Utagan Apastoki, Gimus Goko 6, Exekim Mida Pizia, Gagomodan, the Dodo Go Getan Apastoki. And what that really is saying is that Creator, help us to listen to be kind to one another, to try hard, to be honest, to hear us, Creator. We are in need. Grant us safety. Help us raise our families and our community so that we may live long lives. Thank you. So I'll introduce our next speakers here. I'll let them talk more about themselves, but just to say that these are representing some of the original 5 TCUs in our initiative, and they've been fairly instrumental in the work that they've been doing at their campuses. And we wanted to bring them on board to just highlight, as I mentioned before, this journey in terms of where they were at with their data, but also their experiences and their reflections on how they're using it. We have Amy Tryon from Salish Kootenai College, and we also have Susan Auer Osborne from Aglolo Lakota College. So I'll give it to Amy to introduce herself further. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Amy Tryon. As Jonathan said, I am the Director of Institutional Effectiveness at Salish Kootenai College. I just started my 30th year there, so very excited about that. Started with Upward Bound, working with low-income first-generation students in our local high schools. I was faculty and chair of the Liberal Arts Department for 16 years, and then moved to Department of Academic Success as our director there before moving to institutional effectiveness and getting into data. When we started the CNSS grant, I was faculty on the grant, and so during the last 4 years that we've been involved, I've moved from faculty to a staff position overseeing academic success to now I'm in IR. So I've had the opportunity to really see this project from the beginning from various perspectives. And that's really given me a lot of insight to what Jonathan wants us to talk about today, which is, that data and meaningful KEIs and how that's building our strong SEM at SKC. So previously at our college, data was pretty much one person doing required reports, AIMS, ACUS, iPads, all those great things. And when we did strategic planning, it was always, we had these set plans, but we had no direction. We just knew that, okay, somebody brought together these ideas that our college should be trying to attain, but we really didn't have a purpose, except for somebody said we need to do this. We weren't really measuring to see our growth. And as many of you know, if you can't see that you're achieving something, you're not invested. You're not going to want to be doing that work anymore because you've got better things to do, things where you want to put your attention where you can see that you're having an impact. So really, this CNSS grant and having these KEIs has really brought our campus community together, our students, our staff, faculty, admin, and our board of directors in many ways. The way I see KEIs is they're a 30,000-foot view that inspire ground level work. So, for example, we had a retention goal based on our KEIs. We were in this like 60-some percentile with retention, and we wanted to get up in the 70% with our retention over 3 years. And so knowing that we want to raise our retention rates opened up the doors for us to go, okay, if we're going to raise these, where are we at now? So you have to have that groundwork, and your KEIs give you that groundwork of where I am now and why am I there now? And that's where we started asking the questions that we had never asked before. So if we're losing 35% of our students, why are they walking out the door? Why are they dropping classes? Why are they struggling to pass courses and ending up on probation, warning, or suspension? We started asking those questions because we had the KEI. And when we started asking those questions, we realized we didn't have any data. We had anecdotal information, the registrar maybe knew of a student who dropped. Oh yeah, I know this student dropped because of this, or an advisor or an instructor might know, but we really didn't as a campus know why our students were dropping. And that was what led to our growth in data, because we started asking students. We created Google Forms, we did exit interviews, we started finding out from our students, using our student voice, why did you drop a class? Why did you withdraw from school? Okay, I see you're on probation. What happened last quarter? What's going on that led you to be on probation? And started asking also, what would have prevented you from dropping? What would have kept you in school? What would have prevented your GPA from dropping so low that you're on this probation list, or you're risking losing your scholarships? So once we started collecting that data, we were able to be proactive. We were able to say, okay, we have students who are dropping because there's a lack of tutoring, for example. Okay, so what kind of tutoring do they need? How do we make the tutoring services better? How do we, do they need different hours? Do they need different types of tutoring? And this was really important too, was sharing with our board, because our board of directors was looking at our enrollment, which had gone down a little bit. And they were like, well, why do we have all these students walking? You guys aren't doing enough to support our students. And one thing that we did find is when students drop a class, 88% of the reasons they drop are things that are out of our control. It's not that we can't still support students in some way and maybe needing to take that step back and bring them back in. But if a student has a medical issue that puts them out for several weeks, we can't control that. If they lose housing, if they have an employment issue, maybe their employer wasn't working with their schedule, we can't force the employer to work with their schedule. Maybe they were working and missing a lot of class. We can't change that with that employer, but we can help the student maybe try to look at some scheduling or look at different opportunities to earn money or find a better path. Or maybe we all know there's times you just have to take a step back, and that's okay. But once we were able to show our board that we were looking at what we can control and what we cannot control, and that we were trying to make positive progress in changing those things that we had some control over, our board was very receptive to that and could see that our efforts were aligned with our student needs. Without data, we weren't heard. So another area that we had issues with is housing. We're in beautiful Montana. And between Kevin Costner and the pandemic, a lot of people decided to move in. In fact, on my road right now, I live on a dirt road, and within a 2-mile stretch where there were 6 houses, there are 3 houses being built right now. 3 houses doesn't sound like a lot, but that's a 50% increase just on this 2-mile stretch of dirt road. And we have a lot of housing that people bought up moving into the state. So they bought it and people started selling housing because they saw a huge market for it. So a lot of our rentals are now Airbnbs and they're summer homes. We don't have a lot of housing available for our students in the area. But until we showed our board, number one, the change in the housing through data that we collected from the county and the state in different areas, different sources of data. And we also showed our board how many applications we had on file for our on-campus housing and how many were for single units, how many were for 2-bedroom units, 3-bedroom units, so on. We couldn't get the backing to support building more housing. Our data showed that the majority of our housing applications are coming from students who are around 30 to 35 years old and who are single and wanting their own private unit. They're not wanting to move into dorm pods with 18-year-olds, and they're not looking for family housing. So we do have a housing plan on campus right now, And we're getting ready to break ground on the first phase, which is studio apartments to meet the needs of the most students within our applications. But that wasn't happening without that data. And that's a retention piece. So we started looking at that housing because we had our retention KEIs. Another important point is everyone acting on their own assumptions and anecdotal experiences. Without data, we were really not united or acting on fact. We were acting on a lot of bias. Well, my students do this. My students are really great online. Well, are they or aren't they? Because we haven't looked at the data. And so sometimes people are kind of cherry picking certain students for focus groups, or kind of cherry picking at some of the classes within their programs to kind of sway maybe some decisions. And the other piece we also have on our campus is there was a lot of question about why decisions were made. Well, how come we're moving the student supports and all our tutoring into one building? That was asked because those plans were made pre-COVID. We started going post-COVID into moving those, and people were like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? There's nothing to show that. So we were able to show through data again that students were requesting it, and even some staff had requested that. So having that data and good KEIs, I see, sorry, Lisa's asked me to wrap up, but it's really changed our campus and brought us together towards common goals.
Well, thank you, Amy, for sharing your experiences and your college's experiences. Of course, quite a few things sounded quite familiar, especially some of the struggles and how it has also how the use of data has changed over time. So I have some slides I'm going to share. First, for my introduction, Suzanne Auer Majiapi and Chante Wajayana Petuzapie. My name is Suzanne Auer, and I shake your hand with a good heart. I'm the Director of Institutional Research and Assessment at Oglala Lakota College. I've been with the college for 16 years and 6 years in my current role. I also was faculty first for 9 years, so we have that in common. So I'm going to try not to repeat similar experiences that OLC has, but talk about some of our processes for developing our key enrollment indicators, but also of how we have moved beyond just using the original indicators we've identified and beyond that, and use the data in additional ways. So I was asked to show our dashboard. This is actually our current dashboard within the CNSS format. I just updated that yesterday, so my team has actually not seen that yet. But first, we have used many of those indicators that are on the left for quite a few years. We first established indicators and targets back in 2013 when we created our first enrollment management plan, and then we included many of the indicators in our current strategic plan, which started in 2019. In that plan, in the strategic plan, we identify a little more which specific student groups we're looking at. Like, is it all degree seeking students, for instance, for persistence rates, and for retention, full-time, first-time, and by degree level. So a lot of these things were specified in our strategic plan, which was created by the strategic planning committee with input from various groups at the college. Now, when we started the CNSS project, that was soon after we created, or soon after the strategic plan was implemented. And so we decided not to use different indicators, but we revisited the target increases we had specified. And we did that by looking at our historical data. We wanted to make sure we had targets that were ambitious, so that we don't just continue doing the same thing over and over, but also have targets that are achievable. And so yes, we'd like to have 100% of our students be retained. That's never going to happen, I'm sorry to say, because there's so many other factors beyond our control, as Amy has mentioned. So we've looked at our historical data first for the strategic plan and then also for the CNSS. Now, just briefly for this dashboard, as I said, that's the one in the CNSS format. I tweaked a few things. I inserted some spark lines to show the trends compared to the baseline. Now, the baseline data, that's what you have in green vertical lines. That's 2019-20. That was pre-COVID. Then the targets are the ones, it's still based on what we had defined at the beginning of CNSS, and then the increase by indicator, and then we also for the most recent the red line, that's the current target, and that's based on what the most recently available data is. So that's 23-24 for persistence, fall to spring persistence and the completion rates, and 24-25 retention and spring to fall persistence, since we just now finalized our enrollment list for the current semester. Well, first what you'll see is we are not ahead of the red lines. Now the most recent data, that's the darkest blue, and there's one case for bachelor's degree completion where we're very close, but it's not, it says 11%, but that's rounded up for the actual data. So it doesn't look great, but COVID has happened. And so it's important to look at the changes from year to year, not just in comparison to baseline rate. So for instance, with bachelor's degree completion and associate degree completion, that went down to 0% when COVID started, but we've increased last year. I think it increased to 9%, and most recently 14%. And bachelor's degree completion has also been increasing. So yes, we're below the targets, but we see some progress in general. But this dashboard is upper level. It gives us a general overview of where we are. It doesn't necessarily tell us what we can do to improve. And that's why OLC often disaggregates the data in various ways. And so just one example is for the spring to fall persistence. According to our strategic plan and our indicator in the CNSS grant, we just look at all degree seeking students together. And we see some stagnant data in earlier years, and I'm going beyond before CNSS, and then kind of up and down recently. Now we had big drop in from spring 22 to fall 22. That's when we went back in person with a lot of requirements like wearing masks and getting temperature checked and all things like that. We have decreased again slightly for this semester. We have to look at what happened there. But in general, yeah, it doesn't really give us much guidance. How does it look like when I disaggregate it by full-time and part-time? Our full-time students have always had a much higher persistence rate than our part-time students. And it's the same with the other success measures as well. So now we have been able to increase the part-time students quite a bit. The gap decreased. I think part of that is also with, it started actually before COVID, but it's also with having more distance learning opportunities, but also we've been implementing various strategies to help our students for quite a few years, and we've seen first increases in retention and then increases in persistence. We did have that drop across the board, but we have much success rate of our part-time students. And so we have to look into, okay, so how can we support them? Do, for instance, orientations in the evening. We've just started that recently. We haven't had enough students participate yet to see much effect. But one of the reasons why this is particularly important to OLC is our enrollment has changed. We used to have more full-time students and part-time students, and it switched in fall 21. Since then, we've had quite a bit more part-time students than full-time students. So we have to make sure that we bring up their success rate. We also are going to look at, okay, so why are these students only taking classes part-time? So we are right now, I've already done some polls, and I'm going to do some more to find out some of the reasons for that, find out how many of them are employed. We used to have a lot of evening classes, and we've always had them, including the last few semesters, but it has kind of decreased. And so we're trying to look at, okay, so we have to move more classes to the evening time again. So looking at the data can help us identify what we can do to help what we're doing. So
hey, Suzanne,
yes.
That's great. Why don't we stop right there? I think
Yes.
that was a perfect overview. Really appreciate that explanation of the dashboard and how you guys are looking at the retention and persistence of your part-time students, because you've had such an increase in that population. So thank you. That was really helpful. I'm going to go ahead and move us along in the agenda for the sake of time. Really appreciate what Amy and Suzanne shared. And I want to move us into the key enrollment indicator highlights from 4 of our newer tribal colleges. And what I really wanted to do is, Suzanne did a great job of setting up for how the KEIs, the key enrollment indicators that you all are working to define with us through Mural, are the foundation for your strategic enrollment management dashboard. So I think it's really helpful to see that connection and see the dashboard as a tool. I also just wanted to share a little bit about why we're developing KEIs, and I think both Suzanne and Amy touched on this. So I'm just going to briefly share my screen, and then I will turn it over to some of our TCU partners. So one of the reasons why we are asking you to develop key enrollment indicators is because it helps you think about your strategic enrollment management strategies and really clarify what is the need that you're trying to address with that strategy. So what are you looking to improve? Which students or which staff at your tribal college are you focused on supporting? So as Suzanne was sharing, it might be part-time students, it might be students in developmental education courses. Who are the students that really need your help and why? And then how will you support your students or staff? And then ultimately, how will you know if what you're doing is working? And I think both Amy and Suzanne touched on this. If you can't see if you're achieving something, you aren't going to be invested. And so the key enrollment indicators really help you understand if what you're doing is working, if your strategy is working, as well as where you are with your retention, where you are with your enrollment, whatever it is you're looking at, and then where you want to be, and really think about those questions and be engaged in this continuous process of learning about if what you're doing is working. So I wanted to pivot over to some of our tribal colleges who've been working on their KEIs. And I'm hoping we can start with Little Priest Tribal College. We're joined today by Kavya Marboina, the Director of Institutional Effectiveness, and Mark Vecina, the VP of Finance and Operations, who are going to talk about some of their KEIs related to one of their student support strategies focused on tutoring. So Mark and Kavya, you have probably about 8 minutes. Can you take it away?
Sure. Kavya is sick today, although she's on the line, so I'm going to be the person talking. Are you able to pull up our mural to share?
Yeah, I actually have a graphic for you guys to talk through your KEI, so I can pull that up for you, Mark. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay. Here we go.
Okay, let me just see what we've got here.
So if you can just talk
Okay.
through your
Yeah, sure.
strategy,
I'll
Mark,
talk-
and
I'll
then,
talk.
okay.
Sure, I'll talk to our through our process. We haven't got the dashboard set up yet, but one of the things that I'll point out is that over a year ago, we did put a SEM team together and we created our own, before CNSS, we created our own SEM plan. And so when CNSS came along, we pulled some of our KPIs from the SEM plan that we had and kind of were looking at how to integrate or focus on them in CNSS. And tutoring was a big part of our SEM plan. One of the things that I guess I'd like to point out is that through our conversations we've had with Jennifer, right? That's who I was, Rebecca. And we met a week ago and they had a really useful discussion with us. We were going to focus on two different aspects of our tutoring. One of them is our in-person tutoring, and the other is an online service, which we've been contracting with for at least a couple of years now, 2 or 3 years, called Wisant Tutoring. And what we discussed was that because of our problems with really finding and hiring in-person tutors, particularly for our math classes, which is our major need, we're going to be focusing on our online tutoring. And the other point is, after we had this discussion, it seemed clear that what we will be doing here in our 1-year review of our SEM plan, overall SEM plan, we're going to be focusing in on the issues which we've been focusing on now with the CNSS. It really is helping us plan and think through our original SEM plan. So one of the things that we take for granted, because there's plenty of research out there, is that students who regularly use tutoring are going to improve their overall performance, class grades, completion, retention, and so forth. We do, of course, want to verify that with our own base, but what we're doing with our dashboard is focusing on the online tutoring reports. Wisant allows us to pull down reports over any time period. And just to give you an example of what we deal with, I'm going to use the Wisant report for this fall semester up till today. We have 41 instances of use by online in the last, 3 to 4 weeks now. However, 8 students only used it. We have about, Kavya can correct me with the exact number. We have a little over 210 students that are enrolled this fall. So only 8 students are using it. Out of those 8 students, one student in particular is responsible for 2/3 of the tutoring sessions. We have, I'm sorry, just under 2/3. Out of the students who are using it, 83% of them are going to the tutoring for math. And out of those, out of all that are AFED, which are AFED math classes, which we are looking to transition out over the next year. We're hoping to use CNSS AHEC consulting money to help us do that. But 68% of the use of tutorings was for the AFED math. And so we know this because we've seen the results over the last years, and we know that our students struggle with math. And so tutoring is essential. What we're going to be doing is tracking all of this. Of course, if you take 41 sessions, divide by 8, you've got an average of 5 students that are 5 sessions per student, but actually only one student used more than 5 sessions. Most of the other 7 used either 3, 2, or 1 sessions. So it's real important. And of course, we have all the names and the classes. So what we're going to be doing with this data is our retention specialist is going to be reaching out, of course, to faculty, but to the students to it's another access point to get them to use the online tutoring. They're informed about this during all of our orientations. Our faculty is informed about it. Our faculty announce at the beginning of their classes that online tutoring is available, but it's clear that it's underutilized. Now, we know many students prefer in-person, but the students who've actually used Wyzant find that their concerns were really valid, that they have good discussions. If they don't like a particular tutor, they can reschedule with another tutor going forward. So that's our goal, is to look at that. And then of course, so that's in the center of this this graphic. We've got our KEI1, which is the percent of overall students actively using Wyzant, and the number using it from our developmental math courses by term. But the second point is to understand the distribution of use, because as I pointed out, one student, and this has been historically true with us, even for our in-person, we usually have 1 or 2 students who really value the tutoring and use it. And we've seen in the past that these students have performed very well, got A's on their math classes when they use tutoring to that extent. Our problem is to find our ways to get those students who might be struggling, and we use Dropout Detective and some other contact with our faculty to determine who's struggling. We want to map this up with the performance at the end of a term. We want to look at which students are taking tutoring as part of their student success plan, because not all of our students have student success plans. We only target those students that have probation issues and attendance issues. So we want to map, that's not in the KEI, but when we get these results, we want to map that and see what other strategies that we could use. Obviously, the main strategy is for our retention specialists to reach out to the students who are struggling and not doing the tutoring, and encourage them strongly to do this. Tutoring is all free, of course. So no, I mean, not to us, not to the college, but to the students. And I think that the other thing I want to share, and I think I mentioned it, is that this process that we've gone through with the CNSS staff has helped us sharpen our focus. We were kind of all over the map in our SEM plan, disaggregating data this way, that way, the other way. And we want to focus on easy statistics that we can look at, because the frequency distribution is the difficult part to change. When you have one student every semester who uses more than 50% of our tutoring time, that doesn't cause a problem for us. It just means that the vast majority of students, even those who are using it very sparsely. But we may discover, as we analyze this data, that even those students that only used it a couple of times in a semester, and this is only 3 weeks in right now, so there'll be more use, whether just a handful of tutoring sessions benefit the students or not, which we
Thanks, Mark.
suspect it does. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. That's really great. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much for sharing with the team about your tutoring KEIs. I do want to move on to our second TCU partner so that they have time to share as well before we go into breakout groups. So I'd now like to introduce Wendy Heyman from Bay Mills Community College. And Wendy's the VP of Student Affairs, and she's going to be sharing about some of their KEIs around some of their mental health and wellness supports that they're providing. And Wendy, if you just want to talk about your KEIs, how they relate to your SEM strategy, and what you hope to learn from those, that'd be great. So I'm going to turn it over to you and let me know if you need me to share your graphic or if you'd like to.
If you could share it, that would be helpful.
Sure.
So I'll just start chatting about it. So one of our SEM priority areas is a focus on student mental health and wellness. And we knew we needed to address student mental health and wellness after seeing a number of students citing that as a reason for withdrawing from courses. We would see that in our withdrawal forms. And we also had heard feedback from advisors and instructors that was a concern for our students. So in developing our plan, and after meeting with our team, we decided to focus on students who withdraw citing mental health reasons. And then we developed 2 different KEIs around that. The first KEI is the number or the percent and number of students who withdrew from 1 or more courses for mental health reasons. And used the service, the online service that we have partnered with. It's called Better Minds, for counseling services. They also have like wellness workshops and things. And so we're tracking the students who withdraw and have used those services, and comparing that with students who didn't use those services. So that's the KEI number 2, percent and number of students who withdrew from 1 or more courses for mental health reasons. And then versus the ones that stayed in college who use those services. So we're looking at a number of different ways to kind of measure those. And then we're targeting all of our students. We have a number of online students. We have a high percentage of I think we're at 80% online. They come from all across the country. So we had to partner with a company that could, service students in all states. And for a number of different reasons, our students are citing. So they offer services and counseling for things like trauma, stress, anxiety, loss, and they're licensed in all states. So that was important for us. And we worked really closely with our ATD coaches, and we worked closely with Jackie and Rebecca and Jonathan. I think Lisa was in on some of our meetings to try to once we put all of kind of like what I call our rough draft into Mural. And then we started meeting with that team to kind of help flush out our thoughts and ideas that we had kind of on paper to make it make sense to everybody. We knew what we wanted to address and what we were trying to track, but we also have a lot of limitations in pulling that data and trying to find a process that made sense to get the data that we wanted. And so we actually had to create a couple new processes for tracking students who are withdrawing for mental health reasons. So one of our student engagement specialists, I think she's on the line today, is Latara LeBlanc. And so she's she works with students, and if she gets an email, if they cite a mental health withdrawal reason, she reaches out to that student to try to follow up and offer them some services and make sure that they know that these services are available. And then our other student engagement specialist, Raylyn Hunter, she created that flag and starfish for us. And that's allowing us to track how many students are withdrawing for mental health reasons. And right now we're currently working with our IT team to reformat the Empower system a little bit to be able to better track in Empower how students are withdrawing or why students are withdrawing. But it was really crucial for us to work with Rebecca because I don't think our ideas necessarily made complete sense when you looked at the mural as a whole. And so until we were able to kind of go through all of those data points and things that we were hoping to be able to kind of track and follow. And so that was really important for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Wendy. And is there anything you want to share about what your KEIs will help you understand?
Yeah, so we're hoping that as more students use mental health services, the number of students withdrawing for mental health reasons will decrease, and ultimately we'll see our retention and completion rates increase. And so that was kind of what we're looking for, and we're trying to understand if students are really withdrawing for mental health reasons, or if, I think it was kind of Amy who touched on this before, or if it's due to something else. And if it's mental health reasons, if they use these services, will that help them stay in school and ultimately complete and be successful?
Yeah, and I love the way that you guys are connecting this this strategy and set of KEIs to your longer term retention goals too, that you see this as a really important part of keeping students in school. I also want to point out like what Wendy shared about how this was a process for her team. And I think Mark and Kavya from Little Priest would agree too, that it wasn't like we just met and this was a one and done. It took some time to really move through these discussions and define these KEIs and figure out what was going to work and what was going to be feasible. And I think that part of the process is really important and helpful. So if you feel like your team is doing a lot of reflecting and talking about this, and trying to figure out what you really want to do in this space, I think that's very typical of the partners that we worked with. So that's great. I really appreciate these share outs. I do want to now turn it over to Delphina to set us up for our breakouts.
Yeah, maybe it's still morning where you're at. I just wanted to say thank you so much to Mark and Wendy for sharing your benchmarking template and walking everyone through the process. I know that it's been a little bit challenging in some areas, but I assure you it is totally possible to complete it and create your own KEIs. And I really appreciate the work that y'all are doing in this space. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go into our own breakout rooms, and everyone is going to have a facilitator in each of those rooms. So just a mild change, just a quick change to the agenda. We are not going to share out, just in the interest of time, after the first breakout. But what I would ask you to do is to either if the facilitators would take notes in the breakout rooms, and then we can share those notes out further, and we will share out after the second breakout session. So we'll go ahead and break out now, and Autumn's already designated some rooms for that. So do your magic, Autumn.
All right, so as we come back, we're going to transition into the second theme that Jackie will lead us in. And while we do that, if you have any takeaways from the first theme that we have, please put that in the chat while you were in your groups. So we didn't have time to share in the breakout and share what you spoke about in the breakouts. Please share it in the chat too, so we can hear about what you all talked about and what you took away from it. So I'll turn it over to Jackie to lead us in theme 2 with Ilisavik and White Earth.
Thank you, Lisa. So good afternoon or morning, everyone. I know we're spanning time zones here. I think most everyone is back from break, so we'll get started. So I'm Jackie Gardner, Research and Evaluation Associate for the College Fund. I'm happy to introduce our next presenters, and we'll be hearing about SEM benchmarking KEIs related to TCU data capacity building. So for the first 10 minutes, Caitlin Walls, who's the Executive Director of Institutional Advancement at Ilisavik College, will share KEIs on building data capacity and literacy at their institution. And for the next 10 minutes, we'll hear from Dr. Tracy Diefenbach, who's the Dean for Academics and Student Services at White Earth, share KEIs around building data capacity. Well, Caitlin, if you're here, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Caitlin Walls, and I've been with Ilisavik College for about 13 years, first as faculty, and then in various other roles. So one of our KEIs that we were asked to share about today is on building data capacity and data literacy at the college, both increasing our capacity and then being able to sustain it. As we all know, data and institutional research are systemic. Our main things build that capacity is to hire someone, which we've done, and then to keep them. So we're looking at a 0% attrition rate, which might seem like a gimme in the KEI world, but like many tribal colleges, we have problems with turnover based on where we are located, which is in a very rural, remote Arctic environment, only accessible by plane, and it's obviously very cold much of the year. So being able to retain our coordinator and build our department is important to us. We also, as part of this KEI, want to improve data literacy at the college. And so we are starting a professional development series that'll be cross-departmental and involve almost everyone, at least every full-time employee at the college. And then we've also instituted something we call data moments in our monthly cabinet meetings. Cabinet is made up of all of our college managers, directors, and above. So it's about 17 to 18 people. And that's where each department shares out on sort of key data from the last year within their department to kind of, and then as a group, we contextualize that data so that it's not being siloed. So for example, if HR presents on attrition and retention, and then institutional advancement reports on, donor KPIs, then we talk about what does that mean in the context of our students and attracting students and retaining students and all of our strategic plan goals. So all of this is very holistic in that it's, like the octopus, the tentacles are touching everything, and it's critical that way. And so to build data literacy, one thing we did was then June of this year, we administered our first college-wide data literacy survey to all of our employees and staff. So now we have a foundation. We saw that for those who are in cabinet, they felt pretty confident about understanding data. They rated themselves as 4.1 on a 5-point scale as far as feeling confident with data and data literacy, while our employees who are not in cabinet rated themselves at a 3.0 average. So we see there's work to be done there. And then when we ask the question of whether they think Ilisagvik College uses data effectively in decision-making, it was kind of a split. So 57% of respondents in our survey, which ended up being just over half of our full-time staff and faculty. Anyway, 57% said yes, that we do effectively use data on an institutional level for decision-making. So obviously 43% said no. So I think this relates back to both capacity and literacy, being able to draw the line between collecting all this data, but then effectively implementing change at the institution, which is what we're wanting to do with our SIM work here. So we have some good data, of course, and the question is, how can we use it? And so the process here, originally we had called this category assessment or improving assessment at Ilisagvik when we were developing this last year when CNSS first started for us. And then with Rebecca and Jackie's help, we kind of refined it down to what it really is, which is building this data capacity and data literacy for the benefit of everyone at the college, but also looking forward into weaving it into our SIM strategies. As with most SIM work, often we're using lagging indicators, right? Like retention, persistence, graduation rates are all kind of lagging. And so we're looking to implement more work with leading indicators. We already collect attendance and grades and things like that of our students as they are moving along in real time in their semester. So building the capacity in our institutional research department means hopefully that this data doesn't just go into a repository like it currently does, that it can become dynamic and something that we work with in real time to affect change and administer our strategies that we're developing in order to increase enrollment, increase retention, and increase graduation rates, which is all part of our SIM work, like many of you. So I think I'll stop there. Did I address anything, or Jackie or Rebecca need to speak on anything else? Okay.
Well, thank you so much for sharing, Caitlin. All right, so our next presenter is Dr. Tracy Diefenbach with White Earth. So Tracy, go ahead, take it away.
Could you share the slide with me? I have HLC stuff up and that seems to be what's popping up. Thank you very much. So I'm the interim dean of academics and student services for White Earth Tribal and Community College. And we are working on building our data capacity for the institution. This year, we were able to hire institutional effectiveness director, who is also on this training, Rachel Sukla. We're going to be working together to build the foundation of our data platform for the institution. Some of the things that we're going to be working on is you have different categories, and I think a lot of people get caught up with, you know, what are we doing wrong in collecting data for things that we might have errors in or things we need to improve on, but you also need to focus on building data of things we do well. So one of the key components of building our data platform is improving the reliability of data that things we're putting into our systems and things that we're taking out. That's scrubbing data, looking for redundant information, and then breaking. We collect data on grade analysis, course persistence, grade distribution, retention rates, graduation rates, program completion rates. We have all of this data, but what do you do with it? So you kind of create what I call highways for each data set. And you talked about data literacy. One of the big things is, you know, you have data points and people use different types of data for reporting mechanisms, for grant writing. Is that reliable, consistent data, and where are we pulling that from? So we're looking at baseline data across a multitude of different data platforms in those key areas regarding student learning, the academic assessment, how to integrate the student learning data into the student support services data. Everything from retention, program completion rates, how to divvy that data out into a request form so people know within the institution know what data they're looking for. They understand the data either through the reconstruction of our data glossary, defining our data by department. So we have built, prior to CNSS and working on the mural dashboard, we had built a performance SEM plan. So using the data we currently have and looking at internal and external factors, things that impact student learning, student retention, student support services, but the external components to that too, competitor schools, what are we doing well outside of our region, things that we can incorporate. So as you know, with institutional data, that is a very broad aspect of looking at the health of the institution. So setting proper SEM goals need to be proactive or performance-based. So to give you an example, we're working on an interactive SEM data dashboard. So it's a living dashboard that uses our historical data. And there's a difference between the historical data pieces and the living data pieces. The historical data pieces are data that's scrubbed. We look for errors. We're looking for duplicate information and then honing that into something that can show our trends. The other piece is the living data set. So the interactive SEM dashboard is the living piece. So anybody can go in it, click on a data set that they're interested in, and it'll pull the statistics for that area. It's a work in progress. I think Rachel would agree. There's a lot of moving components to this. The data capacity, if you're looking at on average of 50 different data sets with an institution that drive a SEM plan, it's the overall health of the institution all the way from your institutional goals. And most of the time what we forget in data capacity building is the student learning aspect. So that's course to course persistence. That's looking at grade distribution trends, drops, your C's, D's, and F's. We always look at the support services, which is great for performance-based, improvements, but how is the academic side of the house contributing to the overall health of our SEM? Okay. So for 2024, we have a few initiatives. Is one to strengthen our SEM goals. We're looking at holistic supports. We're looking at the student learning piece. We've hired Rachel in her new position to kind of take over the institutional research and data component. We're looking at building our data request form and the data literacy piece. So whether that's our glossary or we're going to go possibly department by department, and educate on the data that each department could use. So they're understanding that. The development of our SEM committee. Before, SEM typically lied within the student services component because we collect 99% of the data for the school. However, SEM is supposed to be a universal institution-wide project, right? It's the overall health of the entire institution. So we're setting the ground, building the platform, and the ultimate goal is to turn this into performance-based strategic enrollment planning. So we're looking at the internal issues or internal factors or stakeholders. We're looking at the external, what are other schools doing? We're looking at the performance of our academic programming. And then we're looking at the capacity of giving back to the institution the data that's requested to improve department by department. So that's kind of our 2024 in a nutshell. But the main piece I can say, I think Rachel would probably agree, and you can step in if you want, Rachel, is we need to include the student learning piece to this. So not just looking at the support services, but how does academics impact, you know, the overall success from closing the loop, starting with the recruitment enrollment process, all the way to program completion and graduation.
So much, Tracy. Okay, so I think the next step on the agenda is we're going to go to the facilitated breakout discussions again on this theme.
Yep, so I'm going to go ahead and open up breakout rooms again. And again, you'll have a facilitator in the room. And I believe we'll have some time after this breakout session to share out with the group. So if you all are willing to choose somebody from your group to share out. And then also if the facilitators can take notes on some of the things that you hear, just so we can keep those learnings as well. So I'm going to go ahead and open up those breakout rooms now. Okay, I think we're all back in the main room now. Let me just double check. No one's in a breakout room. Oh, no, we still got a couple. Okay, I think we're all here now. So we're going to share out now. Do we have any volunteers from the breakout rooms who want to share what they talked about with the whole group here?
I will share from Little Priest, but I do have a quick question for Megan. She was in the first breakout room. She mentioned a online tutoring service that sounded interesting to check into. Is Megan here? I guess not. Oh, okay, never mind.
We're here. We're here.
Oh, okay. What you mentioned a service that students could just jump on at the last minute and they've been able to find a tutor. Can you just tell me the name of your service?
Yeah, it's called Pear Deck Tutor.
Paradox?
Pear Deck, like pear the fruit, and then deck like outdoor thing. They used to be called Tutor Me. That might also help.
Pear Deck?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, alrighty.
Wait, desk, is it desk or deck?
No, it's deck.
Okay.
We'll send you a message too and spell it out so that.
Okay, well, I could find them.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that we've been using well, when I joined here 7 years ago, we didn't have an IR or institutional effectiveness department. After our current president joined first as the vice president of academics, he insisted on bringing in an IR, IE person who we've had now, Kavya, we've had now for 5 or 6 years. And it's a game changer. We really, not only is she involved in the iPads and submission of the various data requests, but one of the things that we do, well, a couple of things we do is we use Tableau software and we create our own dashboard on enrollments, persistence, retention, and all disaggregated into part-time, full-time, a whole range of things. And she makes a presentation on some aspect of this at every month to, she has probably 20 to 30 minutes in front of an all-staff meeting with all employees and faculty. And we get into some very, very interesting discussions, trying to look at the data, explain the data, try and determine why there are problems. And because we have our auditorium filled with all of our staff and faculty, we get lots of ideas thrown up, and it's really been a good way to disseminate the data culture and the data information, but also get really good discussions and feedback leading to ideas for change and the way we do some of our things. So that's been really valuable. And I think that I know that the work that Kavya has done with us made approaching the CNSS project understandable, and this project has helped us fine tune a lot of our ways of looking at our SEM data. The other point that I made at the breakout was somebody was talking about definitions, data definitions, and it's really important that an institution create institution definitions. Departments shouldn't have different definitions for what it means to succeed, student success, or any of the statistical points. A lot of data definitions are difficult because the different agencies that require our data submissions don't agree. But we have to agree, and we have to agree on our own definition so our data makes sense, so that we can explain it internally and to the other organizations that need our data. We can fine tune the data based on what their requirements are when we know what we're doing. So every now and then we come across something that we didn't define, and so institutionally we discuss it and come up with a definition for these attributes or data points. Any questions about anything? I mean, we couldn't live without institutional effectiveness. And also we've had this one person full-time for almost 6 years, I think. We've just got the board to approve an assistant, because there's just so much work, because we rely on data for our decisions and strategic planning so much that we're adding a second person to our team. We have, 50 or so employees, 210 students, but one person doing data effectively is not enough.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. I love that point about data definitions and having that. I think we have time for one more share out, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Karen. Would you like to share out from our group?
Yeah, because I did take a few notes on this, on things that people said. In our breakout session, there was strong agreement with the importance of academic, not just student success department, gathering data on the support of students. And, as was talked about in the one presentation, about not just what are we doing in the student success department, say early alert, things like that, to get our student success, but are we looking at the academic data? What's happening with the students that are failing? What's happening with those students that are attending college or attending classes, but then they're still failing? Those different aspects of the academic side of data, or data from the academic side that can further support those student success efforts. So that importance was agreed upon. It was agreed upon that data retreats being on the table at different meetings, like, for instance, Mark was talking about the staff meetings where data is shared out, that data on the table at different meetings is important. And so developing sources for those datas. Those dashboards excite people. I think the exact words in our session were exciting to see dashboards. And there was a website that was put in the chat. I don't know if you want to put that in this chat, Autumn. I don't know if it shows up in the main chat when you're in a breakout. But it's the website, the templates that we saw that were presented on screen with the how, when, why, that kind of template for each of those schools that did presentations that's a free website tool that you can use to do your own. One point that was emphasized was keep in mind how culture is integrated into your SEM plan always. For us, our KEIs are based in our mission, which is students will become self-supporting and independent learners. That's part of our college mission, and it's a strong focus of ours to help that, which is also why we're following our graduates. We wanted to develop these measures to follow our graduates to see if that was happening after they leave us. Are they getting jobs? Are they getting terminal degrees? Are they in the fields that they started out in? Are they employed in the community? And coming back to serve the community, that's important for us. So your KEIs should be based in whatever your mission is. That's particular. It will be unique to each of our communities and cultures, strongly based in culture, and do what works for your students in your community at your institution. And that should drive the programming that you're offering also. And so I thought those were probably the main points I picked up out of our session.
Awesome. Thank you, Karen. And I have one more. Galen, did you want to share out from Blackfeet? Jackie sent me a message, or Rebecca sent me a message.
Okay, this is Galen. Last year we started with our elders. We kind of got them a start at the college, got them a placement, so that way they could be integrated into the community, because for us, our elders are really important to us. They're our knowledge carriers, so we're implementing them along, retaining our dual enrolled students and our current students. It's kind of a way to get them in here, show the students that they have a support system with our elders being there. They learn the history from the elders. They learn how to work with the elders. And what we do is, this year we had orientation was completely different. We had a family track where the elders were involved. They would go in, discuss the little things, do a little introduction, let them know that we have a elder center where the students can go in, visit with the elders, get support, emotional support. Maybe they're not, they miss their grandma, maybe their grandma's no longer around, and this gives them the opportunity to come in, sit down with the elders. The elders are invited to come in. They get a free meal, and at the meals they're given a survey. Sometimes it's for watercoloring, art, maybe it's to cut dry meat, just to get the students involved in learning what the elders, that they're there to support them. And it gives them that, that support that they, maybe at home they're not getting, or maybe that they missed from being at home, having their grandparents there. And it really helps them out, because the students, learn that there's other avenues for them to go, maybe go visit with the elders, sit down in the elders' knowledge room, the center, visit with them. And we're trying to use that, with the new incoming students, to give them a start learning about the history, why our elders are so important, and why our elders are the reason why that we're here, because they are the knowledge carriers, and we are a community that, we rally around our elders because they're very important to us. So we're trying to do that with the new students, with recruitment, and especially with the retention and the dual enrollment that we're working on to bring into the college and retain them. And I talked a little bit more about that in our breakout session, about like different things that they do. And the elders, at first, we didn't have that. We had like a whole bunch at first, then they dropped, but they've kind of leveled out, and we've been averaging about 59 elders for every dinner. We do have elders that maybe about 4, during the week that will come in. And a lot of them still prefer to do things in person. So a lot of the surveys are handwritten out, and then we just enter them into SurveyMonkey because our elders are still of that generation where, hard copies. A lot of them we're trying to keep them, like maybe technological. They'll go sit in sometimes in the classroom to do a little history lesson on art, do a little history lesson on some of the activities that we have in the library every week, every month. So that was one of the aspects that we're trying to do, is work in the elders into increasing our enrollment and showing a different support system.
It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Gayleen. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Lisa, who's going to close us out today. We're getting close to the hour and we want to respect y'all's time. So I'm going to pass it over to Lisa now. But thank you all for sharing and for discussing in those breakout spaces. Is really a great space to learn from one another.
Yeah, thank you, Autumn. Thank you all for being here and for engaging with each other today. Thank you to Amy and Suzanne for sharing their insights, and to the 4 TCUs who presented today. You're just sharing the process and your KEIs and how you communicate them is really valuable for all of us to hear. For our next steps, these visuals that were created, these infographics, you'll all get a chance to go through the process that these 4 TCUs went through, and you all will eventually have one of those infographics for your college. And those visuals are wonderful to share out and communicate around what you're doing with your KEIs for your entire college and TCU community. So I encourage you, as yours is co-created with our team and your SEM committee, that those are shared more broadly with your TCU for their engagement and transparency in your work. So another next step, as you know, we have our pre-conference coming up, or convening. That is the pre-conference to the ACRO SEM conference in Boston. So I know you've received a lot of communication about it through email and then through your program officers. So if you have any questions about the conference coming up, let us know. We have 2 TCUs that are going to be sharing in a luncheon panel, and then we also have our program officers presenting in one of the conference sessions too. So if you have any questions on how to register for the conference, we're here to help you. The pre-conference or CNSS convening is on November 3rd, and then the conference is the 4th through the 6th, and is great professional development in learning more about SEM and how to develop it at your colleges. So we appreciate you being here today, and just thank you again for all the work you're doing, and we look forward to seeing you in November. Thank you all.